Great. Okay. So we are recording. It is Monday, August 25th. It's 7 on the dot. Again, this is an optional lecture, so it's awesome if you chose to join, or even if like let's say next week, like you decide you want to come and you can only come for a half hour. Totally fine. It's super flexible. It's a great opportunity if you do have a question over any of the content or any additional questions over the course. It's a really easy opportunity for you just to log on, and it helps you understand what is essentially just what's happening for the week. Give me one second. One of my cats is acting a little wild. Give me 1 second. Let me get him put away and we'll get started here with the lecture. If you have any notes or if you want to get your notebook out, this is the time. I need 10 seconds. All right, sorry about that. I'll go ahead and share my screen. My husband and I, we just moved into a new apartment. And so the cats, we have multiple cats and they're still getting used to everything. So I have my slideshow posted up. I always start the week by just quickly reviewing the questions that you're going to be responding to. These questions that you'll do a weekly reflection for are based off of the Bruce Perry, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog text. I had a couple people email me and they were confused about the response. If you read the syllabus or if you watch the syllabus breakdown video that I created last week, it should be very clear. Each week you're reading one chapter and then there's just a few discussion questions. This is really the bulk of your grade. This is telling me that you're participating on a weekly basis and you're completing the readings that are necessary. So these are the questions that you'll be responding to. I've already had a few people submit this response. And so great on them. I've already graded that. Hopefully you'll see I'm pretty quick to grade things. I've already graded everything that's been submitted, and I'll continue to do so on a weekly basis. So I won't go through these, but I'll always start the presentation just with this. Definitely an intense chapter. I should have given some type of warning last week. This is a really intense text. Each chapter is about a significant traumatic situation a child has faced, and then how Dr. Perry, what Dr. Perry did specifically to fix the situation and to make it better. So it definitely can have some dark and intense moments. And so if there's ever a chapter that's too much or it hits on something that just is a lot for you, just shoot me an email. I completely understand. So with that, we're going to go ahead and talk about chapter 2. So the Crossan Tower text, it's the textbook that's called Exploring Child Welfare. It is optional. So again, if you are watching the lectures and you're taking notes, you don't have to purchase this textbook. If you are watching the lectures and let's say your major is social work and you're very invested or you work with children, then I would recommend purchasing the text. It's a very easy to read textbook. But if this is a very like a one-off course for you, then you'll be fine with the lectures as long as you're watching them and taking the correct notes. Okay, so this chapter is all about families, how families are created, how different types of people have different types of families, and the influence that our culture and our parents and our families have on us and specifically children. So I'm going to read through some of these statistics just to kind of ground us in the information of how a family can be different. And then we'll move forward and talk about specific things that go from there. So the family as an institution has had the greatest influence on the values of society. This should be a very obvious thing. Like when you think even specifically on like American history and what families have looked like and the role of each family member, obviously this really reflects on what we value as a society. When you think about like the 50s and 60s in America, where the man was going out and essentially creating the income for the family versus the wife and the children were expected to be at home, things like that. Obviously, that was then also a reflection of the values of the time. And as we continue to change and grow in a country, we see this changing and growing as well. 64% of children from ages 0 to 17 live in two-parent families. So we still have over half of the American population living in some type of household that has two parents. Now, that parent dynamic could look a lot of different ways, but we still have over half of the children living in America in those two-parent family households. 4% of children live with an unmarried or just cohabitating parents. This is actually probably a higher statistic than 4% at this point, just because a lot of those two-parent families maybe aren't married and are still cohabitating. 24% live only with their mothers, 4% only with their fathers. Again, like even from our older American history, when you think about what does it look like to be a parent, whose role is that? Like in early American history, obviously it was really the woman's role to do the child raising. And so we still see that reflected with the 24% that are living with their mothers versus only 4% with the fathers. Additionally, if there's ever a custody issue, a lot of the times the court is eager to keep the children with the mother. And again, that's definitely a reflection of our historical values. 4% live with neither parent. And so of that 4%, 55 of them live with grandparents, and then 22% live with non-relatives. Then when you break down further inside that percentage, that's when you get into things like foster care and adoption. So obviously, families can look really, really different, but the main goal of a family should be to protect the child, protect the children. Essentially give a part of yourself, the best part of yourself, to your child. A lot of adults, we hear them saying, like, I always want more for my child than I had. I want to give my child a better household, a better future. I want to prepare them better than I was prepared as a child. So we're trying to see this group of a family as a group of people who are living together, who are working together, who are socializing. They financially and emotionally support each other. They meet those basic needs, the educational needs, the medical needs, and essentially show the child how to interact in the world. Now, the crazy thing here is how many different types of families there are, even in these very few simple percentages. And you think about how every single one of those groups is teaching the child to interact with the world in a different way. Obviously, that can be really beneficial because it gives our world many perspectives and diversity. But we also can see, again, that huge, huge, huge influence of the values of society, specifically to where you live in America and what those children are receiving from their parents. The family should be seen as a system. Today's chapter is also going to go into geneagrams, which is a big thing in the social work life. It's very much like almost like genealogy, where you can track your family tree. We're going to look at that as a family and how they all interact with each other. So there's different subsystems within a family. Again, think in your brain like a family tree. You have your parent subsystem. So they are typically at the higher level of this family tree. They are modeling the behavior and the attitudes that are expected. Again, best case scenario, you're modeling positive behaviors. You're showing your child what it looks like to work hard, to take care of the bills, to ensure that their basic needs are met. Think about this devil's advocate, though, the parents that are not meeting those expectations, they're modeling negative behaviors and negative attitudes. It's very clearly also going to be influencing the child. Then you have a sibling subsystem. There should be a boundary between the parent and the sibling subsystems, again, of like modeling the behavior, but of also a child. But then again, in a lot of modern families in America, that's just not how it is. If they're missing a parent and it's a one-parent household and there's an older sibling, a lot of times that older sibling will kind of join that parent subsystem, trying to model the behaviors and attitudes. Or again, like a lot of older siblings end up raising their younger siblings. And so they're the people that are modeling the choices. The family must maintain boundaries with the world. Now, that's a really hard very generalized concept to understand. As a family, you want to be set in your beliefs and your values and your cultural identity. If these are all over the place, if you don't have a great relationship with your family, it's very fluid, you're in and out of different households, it's going to be really hard to keep your individual identity and your family identity. Vice versa, if you are so stuck in your ways and you're ride or die for your family in the way that you don't want to let other people in at all, then your family can become isolated. There's a really fine line between being strong in your upbringing and understanding what you believe based on the values that were influenced and that you inherited, but also being open and looking for new experiences, but applying your foundational beliefs. And so that family system is really flexible. It's really hard to find that one that meets right in the middle, though. I'm sure you've met many people who have either like really lost their original family identity or have become so isolated in it that they struggle to build relationships outside of their families. Rules and rules. It is so crucial to understand the rule and role that different people in the family play. Traditionally, again, in society, specifically American society, your gender had a really big predictor on what your role versus the rule for that was. However, in modern day America, this just looks different. There are still obviously assumed sets of roles for families and rules, spoken and unspoken. Just to clarify that, like, again, thinking back to that traditional family kind of thought, the woman's role was to stay at home, and a rule would be to have dinner ready at a certain time, versus the man's role would be to go out and earn the income. And a family rule, or a spoken or unspoken rule for the man, could be to, again, early American society here, to like keep your emotions to yourself. Don't be an emotional man. Again, these are ever changing and very dependent on the location, the time, and the family beliefs. Communication is the root of how the family functions. Every classic like family comedy movie usually revolves around some type of miscommunication. A great example, one of my favorite Christmas movies, is called The Family Stone. It seems like each part of the family has miscommunications, and it's just kind of how it all unravels. But how we communicate with each other, it's like when you go over to a friend's house or a partner's house, and it seems like they have a whole different language with their family. That's important because that's how you've communicated. That's again what has influenced you. Okay, now we're going to look at the Geneagrams, which is similar to the family tree. If you've never seen it, you're probably going to think this looks something like what you've seen in a biology class. So let's take a look up top at the legend. The legend shows that there's many different types of patterns that you can see between different people. So like, for example, harmony would be a green line, friendship and close is 2 green lines, love has the heart in it. And in love, that's a good distinction. Like, obviously you can love someone in your family and you're not in love with them. Hate and anything that has to do with hostility or negative is red. So like the cutoff or estranged literally has the cutoff line in the middle. The hate is the 3 separated lines. Fused isn't necessarily like the fuse is like they're put together, but it's a hostile thing. A couple other things, like when you look at the far right of the legend, like the focused on, the fan, the limerence, then the blue is where we get into the abuse category. So as a person who is going to work with other individuals, are you going to sit down and draw one of these for every client or every family that you have? No, you're not. However, sometimes you might receive information from a therapist or from another social worker or from someone in your working field that might have information similar to this. And it's beneficial to understand how we can look at people's relationships and how that affects how we treat them. That's the hardest part about being a teacher, about being a social worker, about being anybody that works with people. Once you know the trauma that the person has lived through, treating them just as you would anyone else, but putting in your brain those ways that you can accommodate and be there for that person without singling them out, without making them feel like it's a negative situation. If you take a look at that top left, we have Michael and Anne. So the bottom, I'm sorry, I totally skipped over. The bottom right is the family relationship symbols. So Michael is a square and Anne is a circle, which means they are married. Let's continue on here. So Michael and Anne are best friends. They are very close. As we continue on, they're not divorced, they're not separated, nothing like that. They live together. As we continue on, the X through Anne's name, I'm thinking maybe Anne has passed away. Just because I see that widowed at the bottom right. But again, most of these will always have some type of legend or symbol. They're not always self-explanatory. As we move down, for example, like when you look at Max and Vivian, there's discord and conflict. You see the difference there with the red lines. Between Paul and Megan, it's the red choppy line, so they're hostile. If you continue looking down and you see that blue line, that's going to just be a sign of abuse. So there was abuse between those two people. Again, like these are very, if you like puzzles, like these are very puzzle focused. Each one has a very interesting kind of outcome. But again, like the main takeaway that you should take from this is like you might just be given this, you might be given information about a client. And it's really important to understand where they're coming from. What does their previous family look like? Between that Sadarati and Tony, the blue abuse line, like if we were to look up and every other single family member previous had also experienced abuse, that's obviously going to show us that there's a pattern, and we're going to need to create some really deep systematic change in the family line so that we can prevent additional abuse from occurring later on. So again, it's just important for the overview and understanding the client and the people that you're working with. Okay, again, like I said, there's so many different types of families. We have the dual wage earner, where both of the people in the family, those two adults, the parents, they're both going out to earn. I would say that in America, this now is the norm. Obviously, it wasn't, but in America now, it is the norm that both people who are taking care of the child are also out working. A blended family, so this could be someone who, a divorced father and his two daughters, and then a woman who had never married and adopted, they get married, and that's considered a blended family. So anytime that you're bringing children in from previous marriages, even if it's only on one side, that's considered a blended family. Then you have the single parent families, very self-explanatory. Intergenerational family systems, this is when you have situations like a mother has a child and then they fall into addiction and they can no longer take care of the child. So the child is legally adopted by grandparents, an aunt, someone else in their generational bubble. So that just means someone else in their family. Kinship caregivers I'm so sorry. Intergenerational has to mean different generations. Kinship caregivers could be like your aunt adopting you, or your grandma, or it like those can be really connected. Kinship just means it's someone in your family. Intergenerational means that there's a significant age gap. And then finally, gay and lesbian families, obviously very, very relevant in 2025 America. Okay, this is something that, again, like even if you have no idea about social work, this is your first class. This is something that every person will see this and you're gonna be like, okay, oh my gosh, I know someone exactly like that. Or someone I was in a relationship definitely had this, and this is why we had this struggle. There's a really interesting book about this. It's all about attachment styles. So essentially, like this is about when a child is young and their relationship with their family will then determine the types of relationship and who they are in a relationship as they are an adult. So there's a few different types. There's secure, ambivalent, avoidant, and disorganized. We're going to go through, but think about this as I'm reading through these. Think about maybe where you fit. If you're in a relationship or if you have a close friend, you could also think about where they fit. And then that's when it gets interesting, because then you're like, okay, if I'm this type and they're this type, how does that make sense in our relationship? Where do I see those connections? So secure. This is like your prime situation. This is when the child has a healthy relationship with their primary caregiver. A big thing, and you'll see this as you continue reading the Bruce Perry text, a child should have distress when they're left alone. Obviously, like, we want them to be comfortable. We want them to be able to sleep on their own. But if a child's left in a grocery store by themselves, they should naturally be distressed because they have a relationship with their caregiver. They know their caregiver is going to take care of them and they want that connection back. These types of people can seek support in relationships because they were given support at a young age. They also are really good at regulating their emotions and managing conflict in close relationships. So again, like, if you have a healthy relationship, it's probably someone that has the secure attachment. Ambivalent. So this was the child that, like, very rarely saw their parent. Maybe they had a revolving door babysitters or different people watching them, but they just didn't get to spend a lot of time with their parents when they were young. Again, they're probably still going to have distress when they're left. Again, like, that idea of, if it's a revolving door, like, you don't know who you're going to have access to. Yeah, that's distressing. They crave close relationships. Like, they really want to jump into a relationship. But then once they do it, they're struggling to trust. Because again, when you think about it as a child, revolving door, they don't know who they're going to have and how long they're going to stay. They feel like they need a lot of reassurance. And they just have some general anxiety and jealousy. This is a really popular category of attachment style. And again, if you look deeper into this, it talks about, if you're in a relationship with one of these types, how best to communicate, show love, things like that. So it's super interesting. Then we have avoidant. So here's where we start to get into the really negative categories. The avoidant is, as a child, there was some type of abuse or neglect from their caregiver. They have no preference for parental presence. So that's that idea of, for example, like, if you had a parent and then another kind looking person, the child's not going to, like, automatically pick the parent. There's no preference. Like, if they're walking to one of those adults, they're very independent. They had to be, because they could not put any trust. They couldn't seek any support from their caregiver. There's withdrawal. They minimize the feelings of others. It's that kind of idea of, like, oh, well, I had to go through this. And so if you have that, like, that's nothing compared to what I had to go through. That minimization of how people feel. And then they just want to keep it casual. Again, like, the deeper you go, the more opportunity for you to get hurt. And so if they had avoidant caregivers as a child, that's how they're going to be as adults. Okay, and then we have disorganized. So these are the people that are just all over the place, and you're like, what is going on in your brain? Inconsistent parenting. So maybe they had parents that were secure at one point, and then maybe something happened and a parent left, and now it's ambivalent. They don't have a lot of availability. Say you have a really great 2-parent household, an issue breaks up the household, and now it's a single parent household, and that parent has to go to work all the time. So this is really inconsistent for the child. The relationships are confusing. Again, they just don't know what to expect. It's been different things. It's inconsistent. And then it bounces back on, oh, it's my fault that you're not there for me. I've done something wrong. It's my fault that I had parents in and out. It kind of bounces back on the child. And then again, like, kind of that tendency towards aggressive or antisocial behaviors. A lot of times I see this in children in the classroom that have that disorganized attachment style. When it's not coming easy to them, or they feel really safe, again, like, if they feel really safe with you, you're the easiest person for them to blow up on, because they know that you're not going to neglect them or abuse them, and they know you're a safe space. It's really hard for a lot of professionals that work with children that have experienced trauma or have been in a disorganized attachment relationship with their caregivers, because you're trying to provide that safe environment. And you're like, why is this kid always blowing up on me? Why is this always a big fight? Well, a lot of times it means they trust you, and they know that even in their worst moment, you're still going to be there for them. Something to keep in mind. So again, just a couple quick things here. That last, like the last two, the non-attached, this is just like the disorder of like you had nothing, and you're going to read a chapter very, very similar to this in the Bruce Perry text. But this is like you have no, like you don't respond to comfort. It's difficult to form relationships. Maybe you're superficially charming, affectionate with other people, but you struggle to make eye contact. Maybe you just don't have a lot of consciousness, like you're cruel to other animals, you're lying, you're stealing, you don't have impulse control. It could be seen as ADHD, but it's a lot of times it's truly because you had zero attachment as a child. You have to learn how to attach to people, what it looks like to care for things. Think about it. Like if you're a child that has zero attachment with their caregiver has not paid any attention to you besides making sure that you are fed. And then you're going to treat an animal in a negative way. You're going to treat other people in a negative way because you weren't treated positively. We're going to skip the video. Okay, impact of culture. The next few slides, we're shifting from specific statistics, looking at the family unit, and we're going to look more at culture and then heritage. Very interesting. So it's our responsibility as people who deal with people. Again, like it's not even in a specific career, but like we should just know this, to be present and understand like the people that we're working with. So thinking about what's their culture. Are they connected with a subgroup? Is their relationship with the subgroup or wider culture unique, different? What are the family's individual characteristics? And then how does this family adapt to stress? This is really important when you think about, again, like if you're working with a child, maybe whose family immigrated here recently, it's important to understand what is their original culture, how is that going to affect the child and how they're acting, versus like now they're also going through the struggle of being disconnected from their home culture, not feeling connected with where they are or their home culture, and they're just kind of floating. And then what is the family going to do to adapt to this new stress? These are questions like every time I meet a new child in the classroom or even in the hallway or out in the world, I'm thinking in my brain, like, what is this child's background? How is this going to affect who they are and how that shows, like who they show to me? So like, for example, today was the first day of school. So I met all my new students, and I'm thinking in my brain as I'm meeting these students, like what cultural impact that they have at home, how is that going to bleed into the classroom? What are we going to learn about as a whole, positive or negative? What are they going to be able to bring that's specific to their family's characteristics into the classroom? And then how will that affect the learning environment? So just important things to think through. Okay, I'm going to read out of the textbook for this one. This is on page 47. They just give some really nice definitions of the overview of cultures. So we're just going to flip through a few of these, some things I thought were really interesting. So specifically, it says a family's culture of origin can have a significant impact on how the family functions in terms of its values, its roles, rules, and communication patterns. This is important, obviously, because it helps you identify with your clients and understand where they're coming from. So Anglo-European roots tend to value independence, self-direction, assertiveness, freedom, and equality. Again, like the idea of thinking about American history and European people coming to America, like that should be a lot of that independence, self-direction, assertiveness, freedom. Communication is different depending on the family and how they were raised, and personal choice for religion. Families with Native American roots value community and sharing. Often the child is taken care of by a community and not a single unit. Spirituality is based upon nature and a lot of tradition, a lot of family tradition. Again, like you should already see, like dealing with children with different roots, that's going to affect how you talk to them, the examples, and how you can create a positive environment for them. Families with African American roots are often influenced by their history, as many have descended from former slaves. Families rely upon one another, and extended family members or kin play an important role in life. Hard work is valued with shared responsibility and aspiration towards education. Again, like this is a really powerful thread through American history of this idea. Like if you look back, we are still constantly seeing the repercussions of early American history. slaves were not allowed education. And so in many African American households in 2025, we're still pushing our children. They're still pushing their children for that academic excellence, because again, it's that mindset of I want to do better than I had. And so we're continuously pushing. It also says religion plays a significant part in family life. When you look at Hispanic or Latino roots, these can be really diverse, with Mexican, Puerto Rican, and Cuban families being the most prevalent. The extended family is important and plays significant roles. Respect, really big thing in Hispanic roots. And religion typically plays a significant role and tends to be Catholicism. Then when you look with families with Asian roots, these can also be diverse, coming from a variety of different countries with different traditions. But it is possible to generalize to some extent. Like, okay, let's be careful here. Asian families have clear hierarchical structure. And with male dominance. So the most important thing there is that the males typically rule the family. Respect and obedience is expected. Very close family. Religion depends on geographic location. Families with Middle Eastern roots are also diverse. The family is valued, and multiple generations might live and work together. So that's that intergenerational family where there's multiple generations in one household. Again, patriarchal, meaning that the family and the man is the head of the household, but they do value collective achievement. So that's an example of like if the son graduates medical school, the parents also feel that as their own personal achievement because it's the collective. Religion is very central to family life, with Islam, Judaism, and Christianity being the three main. Finally, just mentioning diverse sexual orientation culture. Obviously, this is important. Like each one of these groups has so much significant, important historical upbringing and how it affects the families. So today's families can also be made up of anyone in the LGBTQ umbrella. Although it's difficult to identify a specific profile because it's so vast, there are some similarities. Having children is intentional. In these LGBTQ relationships, they have to choose to have a child. And so there's some desire there to ensure that the child is going to be well taken care of. In many other types of relationships, a child could be considered like an accident or a surprise. And so there's more likelihood that a child in a situation where they would be an accident isn't going to be taken care of, versus in an LGBTQ relationship, they have to be really specific and invest a lot of money to be able to have children. So the parents often center their lives around raising these children. The roles are very individualistic and not along any gender line. So if you prefer this task in the household, or if you're better at this, that's what they follow. There's no specific kind of gender role. And obviously these families deal with stigma, issues of acceptance from their families of origin as well. So a lot of times those diverse sexual orientation families, they struggle to create relationships past their small family bubble, just because other people in their family, grandparents, things like that, they might not accept what the family looks like. Again, very important. All of this is that idea of when you have a client, when you have a student, when you have a child, you should be thinking in your brain this whole profile of what they had as a child, what they have in the home, and how that affects them and how they're acting and what they're saying. It's super important to think through. Okay, obviously families have different stresses, and looking at how they cope is also important because, again, this is influencing the child. So, families can seek help for the following. Maybe there's a parental role that's unoccupied. Maybe that other member has passed away, illness, they could be in prison, mental illness, or abandon the family. Maybe the parent is there, but it's just incapacitated. So again, very similar, like ignorance, like they're just incapacitated. They didn't know they needed to go and do this, and now they're just kind of out for the count. Emotional immaturity, mental, oh gosh, I am so sorry. I changed this last semester, and this, obviously we do not say mental retardation. So that will be changed. That's an inappropriate verbiage. And then substance abuse. So again, like the parent can just not do the role that they need to do. Role rejection, neglect, abandonment, and abuse. interrole conflict. So maybe the people who are both in the household, there's conflict there. And so they need help to resolve that. Transition issues, developmental or environmental. Again, like moving. Oh my gosh, moving is so incredibly expensive. It's so difficult for families to pick things up and move. And they need a lot of families need additional help with that. And then again, if the child is incapacitated, so if they have a disability, they might need additional resources. And these aren't just financial. Like if any of these things happen, you have to figure out how, like, one, you have to figure out how you feel about it. Two, maybe you do need financial assistance because you're pouring all your money into one of these reasons. And then three, like thinking about now, how do I cope? How do I move forward? What am I going to do because of this? A lot of these cause economic strain. Divorce can continue to cause issues within a family. And then immigration is a huge thing in 2025 America. Many people have different family members that maybe are being deported, or if you have to immigrate, or if you have immigrated, obviously that's a strain on your family. So some services that we can provide families. Supportive services. So this is the home is here and we are supporting what they already have. Home-based to help care, protect, and nurture the child. So the family is there. We're going to support you. We're coming into your home and we're going to give you some of these services. We're going to empower the family to continue what they're doing and show them how to better themselves. We're going to counsel them and talk them through these difficult situations and how they can cope. We're going to do early intervention because intervention isn't the best case scenario. Prevention is always the best case scenario. But if you can get in and intervene early, you're going to help that family significantly. And then again, protective and proactive services. So ensuring that we're helping set these families up for success. Supportive is the family is there and you're coming into support. Supplementary, there's some type of issues, some type of relationship is impaired and is struggling, and a greater need of services needs to be provided, whether that's financial, whether that's childcare or homemaker services. So this typically is a situation that's more, it's something in the family unit is missing, and there has to be a supplement to create that original unit. And then finally, substitute services. These are always the last resort. This is things like adoption, foster care, and residential treatment. All of these could be different public agencies, nonprofits, community funded, private for profit, corporate. Every town, every city, every country has different services that they provide. And it depends on your local government, how much it costs and what you have available to you. Again, this is definitely a huge reason why people move to certain areas, especially if you already are a struggling family unit and you know certain cities are able to provide additional resources. That can be a huge factor in where you're living. Okay, this is our last slide for the day, and it's resiliency. So how families can be resilient, how we can take the information that we've talked about throughout the slideshow, and we can continue growing and we can resolve the things. I mean, there probably is not a single family in 2025 that's perfect. Everyone has some type of family trauma. If it's an attachment disorder, if you are struggling with your cultural heritage, there's so many possibilities, but we still have to be people. Like we still have to get jobs. We still have to keep the world moving. And so we, as adults, like we need to figure out our own family conflicts and resolve it. That way we're not continuing the cycle, and we can also basically show children how to do this themselves. And so if you have a negative situation at home, here's a coping skill you can use. And then as you grow older, you don't have to make that same choice. Things that help the process of family resiliency is a belief system. So again, that could look like a lot of things. It doesn't have to mean a church, but it could just mean like some core tenets that you as a family that you follow. Organizational patterns. Children need structure. The worst thing you can do for a child, even the most normal, high achieving child, is consistently throw off a routine. Children have to have a routine. They struggle when they don't know what's next. They want to know what's next so they can plan ahead. And then finally, communication and problem solving. I see this as so much as an educator. If a child is having a problem, like take 30 seconds, let them talk to you about it. Let them talk to the other person that has the issue. Show them how to properly communicate through that issue. A lot of times, like, a child could say, "Hey, mom, like, I want to go to bed. I'm struggling to," like, they're showing the issue to the parent and it's shut down. Oh, just go to bed. Who cares? I don't want to hear about that. Okay, well, now they have the issue. Now they understand that you don't care about their issue. And now you haven't shown them at all how to properly communicate or how to solve the issue themselves. And so making sure that you're stopping, you have that routine, you're proving yourself supportive and consistent for the child and being able to talk about it and solve the problem. Okay, that was our lecture for today. I'm going to stop sharing and go back to my original screen. I do want to share one more thing. I just want to quickly again show you the Canvas classroom just to make sure we're all on the same page. So again, like, I've had a lot of people submit things. Awesome. I posted yesterday when this went live, just when today's lecture was going to be posted. So it'll take a little bit for this to upload. It'll probably be by 8:30. I'll have everything uploaded, the lecture questions for the quiz that's due on Friday. Again, everything is due on Friday. I did go ahead, I put in some video links for the attachment theory and the Geneagram. Both are so interesting, especially the attachment theory video. If that was an interesting topic for you, I would definitely spend some time and watch that. But that is where we are going to wrap up today. Again, the lecture in the entirety was 41 minutes, which really great. Again, if you think about an in-person class, you don't have any 40-minute in-person classes. So that went really well. Again, you're responsible each week for reading the Bruce Perry chapter and then completing the questions. And then additionally, the lecture quiz. Everything is always due on Fridays. The only thing that wasn't was last week with the introduction. So this Friday, you'll have 2 assignments due. So please ensure that that gets completed. You do have to purchase the Bruce Perry, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. You are doing a written response every single week to that. Again, the textbook is optional, but that text, the Bruce Perry, you must purchase. Okay. Thank you. Week 2 is getting started here. I hope this lecture was interesting. I feel like this is a very interesting lecture with attachment theory and just how we look at people. It's very easy to relate to multiple different types of work. So with that, I'm going to end our recording, and I appreciate people coming today, and I look forward to seeing some more of you next week. Thank you.